The small town of Circleville had always been a quiet place, where everyone knew each other's business or at least thought they did. But in the summer of 1976, that small-town peace was shattered by the arrival of a series of mysterious letters that would forever change the lives of its residents. The kitchen is warm and filled with the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Mary Gillispie, a kind-faced woman in her early 40s, is setting the table for breakfast. Her husband, Ron, a sturdy man with graying hair, walks in holding an envelope. Ron, frowning. "Mary, another one came today." Mary, sighing, her hands pausing over the plates. "Let me see." Ron hands over the letter. Mary unfolds it with trembling hands. The paper is covered in scrawled handwriting, the letters slanting ominously across the page. Mary reading the letter. "Gillispie, we know what you've been up to. You can't hide it forever. Admit the truth before it's too late." Mary's face drains of color as she reads the rest. The letter accuses her of having an affair with Gordon Massey, the school superintendent, a baseless accusation, but one that cuts deep. Mary, whispering, "This is madness, Ron. Who would do this?" Ron, angry, pacing the room. "I don't know, Mary, but they won't stop. It's like they know everything about every move we make." Later that day, Mary is at the school bus yard preparing for her route. Her friend and fellow bus driver, Linda, approaches, her face clouded with concern. Linda, softly, "Mary, I heard, did you get one too?" Mary, nodding, her voice strained. "Yes, Linda, I don't understand. It's like they know everything about us. But it's all lies." Linda, looking around nervously, "You're not the only one. Others have been getting them too. Accusations, threats. It's like the whole town is under some kind of spell." Mary, determined, gripping the steering wheel of her bus. "Whoever it is, they won't scare me. They can't tear us down with their lies." Mary stands outside Gordon Massey's office, her heart pounding. She needs to confront him, to tell him about the letters. She knocks on the door, and Gordon, a tall, imposing man with a stern expression, beckons her in. Gordon, concerned as Mary hands him the letter, "Mary, this is serious. Have you shown this to the police?" Mary, shaking her head. "No, not yet. I wanted to tell you first. They're saying things, Gordon. Terrible things about us." Gordon, frowning, reading the letter. "Who could be behind this? And why?" "This is slander, Mary. We have to do something." Mary, voice breaking. "But what if it's someone we know, someone close? They know too much, Gordon. Far too much." Gordon looks at her, his face grim. The weight of the situation hangs heavy in the air. Gordon, quietly, "We need to be careful, Mary. Whoever this is, they won't stop until they get what they want." The sun is setting as Ron and Mary sit in the sheriff's office. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe, a man with tired eyes, listens intently as they recount the events. Sheriff Radcliffe, thoughtfully, "So, you're telling me this isn't the first letter?" Ron, firmly, "No, Sheriff, it's been weeks, and it's not just us. Other people in town are getting them too. They're trying to ruin lives." Mary, nodding, "Whoever it is, they're dangerous. They're watching us, Sheriff. They know too much." Sheriff Radcliffe, sighing, leaning back in his chair. "I'll do what I can, but these letters, it's hard to track something like this. We'll need more evidence." The sheriff's words do little to comfort them. As they leave, the sense of unease only grows, the shadows of the town seeming darker than ever. And so it began what should have been another sleepy summer in Circleville turned into a nightmare. The letters kept coming, bringing with them fear, suspicion, and tragedy. No one was safe, and as the years passed, the mystery of the Circleville Letters would only deepen, leaving a town forever haunted by the secrets it couldn't keep. The once quiet town of Circleville was now a place of whispered fears and dark suspicions. The letters had escalated from unsettling accusations to chilling threats. And for Ron Gillispie, the terror was about to become all too real. The room is dimly lit. The only sound is the ticking of a clock on the mantel. Ron Gillispie, haggard and tense, sits in an armchair staring at a letter in his hand. His wife Mary stands nearby, her face etched with worry. Mary, softly, "Ron, you have to tell someone. This has gone too far." Ron, grimly shaking his head. "I can't, Mary. They're watching us. They know everything. They said they'd kill me if I didn't stop you." He throws the letter onto the coffee table. The words, "I know what you're doing. Stop now or die," glare up at them in jagged handwriting. Mary, desperate. "But it's all lies. You know that, don't you?" Ron, looking at her with haunted eyes. "It doesn't matter what's true, Mary. It only matters what they believe and what they'll do to make sure no one talks." The Gillispie home is quiet, the only light coming from the kitchen where Mary is cleaning up. Suddenly, the phone rings, slicing through the silence. Mary picks it up, but before she can say anything, Ron appears in the doorway, his face pale. Ron, urgent, grabbing the phone from her. "I'll get it." He listens for a moment, his expression hardening. His knuckles whiten as he grips the receiver. Ron, low and threatening. "I don't know who you are, but you leave my family alone, or I swear." The voice on the other end cuts him off. Whatever it says makes Ron's face a drain of color. He slams the phone down and storms out of the room. Mary, alarmed, following him. "Ron, what did they say?" Ron doesn't answer. He's already pulling a revolver out of the drawer, his hands shaking as he checks the chamber. Mary, panicking. "Ron, what are you doing? You can't go out there." Ron, tightening his grip on the gun, his voice cold. "I'm ending this, Mary, tonight." Ron's truck roars down a desolate country road, the headlights cutting through the darkness. His face is set in grim determination, but his eyes flicker with fear. He glances at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone following him. The road ahead twists and turns through the dense woods. Suddenly, something catches his eye movement in the trees, a shadow darting across the road. Ron, muttering to himself, "There you are." He floors the accelerator, his truck hurtling toward the spot where he saw the figure. But as he rounds a bend, he sees something else, a flash of metal in the darkness. A gunshot rings out. Ron jerks the wheel, but it's too late. The truck skids off the road, crashing through the underbrush before slamming into a tree with a sickening thud. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe stands nearby, his face a mask of professionalism as he surveys the scene. Mary is there too, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. Sheriff Radcliffe, somberly. "Mary, I'm so sorry. The coroner says it was a drunk driving accident." Mary, shaking her head, her voice trembling. "But Ron wasn't drinking. He never drinks." Sheriff Radcliffe, gently. "We found his blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit, Mary. There were no other signs of foul play." Mary, hysterical. "But what about the letters, the threats? He wouldn't have just crashed. Someone did this." Radcliffe looks at her, his eyes filled with pity but also with doubt. Sheriff Radcliffe, firmly. "There's nothing more we can do, Mary, I'm sorry." Mary's gaze shifts to the shadows beyond the crash site, her mind racing. She knows in her heart that Ron didn't die by accident. Somewhere out there, the real culprit is watching, waiting, ready to strike again. Ron Gillispie's death marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Circleville mystery. The letters didn't stop, and neither did the fear. As the shadows deepened over the town, the question remained who was behind the letters, and how far would they go to protect their secret. The Circleville Letters had continued their sinister campaign of fear and intimidation, but now they were about to cross a deadly line. For Mary Gillispie, the terror she had lived with for years was about to manifest in a horrifying way. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet countryside as Mary Gillispie drove her school bus along her usual route. The children's chatter filled the air, but Mary's mind was elsewhere, always on edge, always wondering what new horror the day would bring. As she rounded a bend, something caught her eye on the side of the road. A sign, crudely made, was nailed to a fence post. Mary's heart sank as she read the words scrawled across it. Vile, venomous accusations about her teenage daughter. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white with anger. Mary, to herself, furious. "Not my daughter, you sick bastard." She pulled the bus over, her heart pounding. The children watched curiously as she stepped out, walking briskly toward the sign. The words were ugly, hateful, and she couldn't let them stay there for the world to see. As she reached out to tear it down, something caught her eye, a glint of metal hidden behind the sign. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she realized what it was. Mary, gasping, pulling her hand back. A gun. Her mind raced. She had been moments away from pulling the trigger herself. The sign was a booby trap designed to kill her the moment she yanked it down. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she carefully stepped back. her eyes never leaving the crude device. Later that day, Mary sat in Sheriff Radcliffe's office, her hands still trembling. The sheriff, a grizzled man with a furrowed brow, examined the trap on his desk, a box rigged to a loaded gun, its serial number scratched off but still faintly visible. Sheriff Radcliffe grimly, "This is no prank, Mary. Someone wanted you dead." Mary, voice trembling, "I knew they were dangerous, but this is evil." The sheriff nodded, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the gun. He motioned to his deputy, who handed him a file. Sheriff Radcliffe, flipping through the papers. "We traced the serial number. It's faint, but it's enough. The gun belongs to Paul Fresher, your brother-in-law." Mary's eyes widened in shock, disbelief flooding her face. Mary, stammering, "Paul? No, that's impossible. He would never—" Sheriff Radcliffe, firmly, "Mary, the evidence points to him. We found handwriting samples that match the letters, too. We need to bring him in." The Fresher residence, where Paul is being led out in handcuffs. His face is a mask of confusion and anger as he protests his innocence. Paul, shouting, "You're making a mistake. I didn't do this. I didn't write those letters." Mary stands in the yard, watching in stunned silence as her brother-in-law is taken away. She wants to believe him, but the fear and doubt gnaw at her insides. Mary whispering to herself, "Could it really be him? But why would he do this?" The weight of the situation crashes down on her, and she feels a deep, sinking dread that she may never truly know who is behind the nightmare that has engulfed her life. In the courtroom, Paul Freshour stands before the judge, his face pale but defiant. The prosecutor presents the evidence: the gun, the booby trap, the handwriting analysis. Mary sits in the gallery, her hands clasped tightly together as the trial unfolds. Prosecutor addressing the jury, "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is clear. Paul Freshour constructed that trap with the intent to kill, and he wrote those letters to terrorize this community, to destroy lives." Paul shakes his head, his voice breaking as he addresses the court. Paul, desperately, "I didn't do it. I swear I'm being framed. Someone else is out there, the real letter writer." But the jury is unconvinced. The verdict is swift: guilty of attempted murder. As Paul is led away, he locks eyes with Mary, a silent plea in his gaze. Paul, softly as he's taken away, "I didn't do it, Mary, I swear." Mary's heart aches with conflicting emotions. She watches as the doors close behind him, knowing that even with Paul behind bars, the letters her torment may never truly end. The town of Circleville had hoped that with Paul Freshour's conviction, the nightmare of the letters would end. But as the days turned into weeks, the letters didn't stop. If anything, they became more brazen, more sinister, and the fear that had gripped the town for nearly a decade only deepened. Paul Freshour sits on the narrow bed of his prison cell, staring at the gray walls. The sound of clanging metal and distant shouts fills the air. But Paul's mind is elsewhere. He knows he's innocent, but that knowledge does little to comfort him. Suddenly, the guard appears at the bars, holding an envelope. Guard, gruffly, "Freshour, you've got mail." Paul looks up, confused. He hasn't received any letters since his imprisonment. The guard tosses the envelope onto the bed. Paul picks it up, his heart racing as he recognizes the same jagged handwriting that had haunted his life for so long. Paul reading the letter. "Now, when are you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set 'em up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all?" Paul's hands shake as he drops the letter, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. The realization hits him like a punch to the gut. The real letter writer is still out there, and they're toying with him, even from within these prison walls. Paul, whispering to himself, terrified, "Who are you? Why won't you leave me alone?" Meanwhile, in Circleville, a tense town meeting is underway. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe stands at the front of the room, facing an angry crowd. The letters have continued, accusing him of covering up Ron Gillispie's death, and the townspeople want answers. Townsmen shouting from the back, "We trusted you, Sheriff. How can we know you didn't bury the truth about Ron's death?" Sheriff Radcliffe raising his hands for silence. "Listen to me. I've done everything in my power to stop these letters, to find the person responsible. But I'm telling you, it wasn't Paul Freshour. He's behind bars and the letters keep coming. There's someone else out there, someone who wants to tear this town apart. A murmur runs through the crowd. The fear is palpable. If not Paul, then who? And why won't they stop? Mary Gillispie, standing up, her voice shaking. Whoever it is, they know too much. They know things no one should know. We're all targets and no one is safe. The room falls silent as Mary's words sink in. The letters have accused the prosecutor, the sheriff, and even ordinary citizens of the most heinous crimes. Everyone is a suspect, and everyone is a victim. Later that night, Prosecutor Roger Klein sits in his office, sifting through files. The weight of the ongoing investigation presses down on him like a vice. His phone rings, jolting him from his thoughts. He hesitates, then picks up. Prosecutor Klein, cautious. Klein speaking. There's a pause, and then a distorted voice speaks on the other end, cold and mocking. Mysterious voice. You think you're safe, Klein. You think the truth won't come out? I know what you did, and so will everyone else. Klein's blood runs cold. He knows this voice. It's the same one that's haunted the town for years. The same one that led to Paul Freshour's conviction. The same one that could destroy him. Prosecutor Klein, desperately. Who are you? What do you want? But the line goes dead, leaving only the sound of Klein's rapid breathing and the echo of the threats in his mind. He knows he's being watched, and the walls of his office seem to close in on him, the shadows growing darker by the second. Back in his prison cell, Paul is pacing, his mind racing. He knows he needs to prove his innocence, but how? Suddenly, an idea strikes him. He rushes to his small desk and starts writing a letter of his own. Paul, writing furiously, to anyone who will listen, I am innocent. The real letter writer is still out there. They're using me as a scapegoat, and I'm begging you, please, reopen the investigation. Look deeper. The truth is out there, and I'm not the only one who knows it. He seals the letter and hands it to the guard the next morning, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, will listen. The continued arrival of the letters shattered any illusion of safety in Circleville. Paul Freshour remained in prison, but the real terror was still at large. As the shadows of suspicion deepened, the question lingered: who was the true mastermind behind the letters, and how far would they go to keep their secrets hidden? The mystery of the Circleville Letters haunted the town for nearly 2 decades, casting a long, dark shadow over its residents. As the letters finally stopped in 1994, just as Paul Freshour was released from prison, the sense of relief was tinged with a chilling realization no one had ever conclusively identified the true author of the letters. And so, the whispers began, each theory more unsettling than the last. Mary Gillispie sits alone in her living room, the weight of years of fear and suspicion heavy on her shoulders. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the ticking of the clock. A knock at the door startles her, and she rises to answer it. Standing there is Linda, her longtime friend and fellow bus driver, her expression serious. Linda, softly, Mary, I need to talk to you about the letters. Mary hesitates but steps aside to let her in. They sit down, the air thick with unspoken tension. Mary, nervous. What is it, Linda? Why now? Linda, leaning forward, her voice low. The letters stopped when Paul got out. But Mary, what if it wasn't him? What if it was someone closer? Mary's eyes widen, a cold dread creeping into her heart. Mary, whispering, You don't think it was me, do you? Linda, shaking her head. I don't know, Mary. I don't know who to trust anymore. But people are talking, and some think it has to be you. You knew things, Mary, things only the letter writer could know. Mary recoils as if struck, her face pale. Mary, desperate. No, Linda, I would never. I was a victim, just like the rest of them. Linda, gently. I want to believe you, Mary. But the town is different now. People are saying all kinds of things. Some even think it could have been Ron, trying to keep you in line, until it all went too far. Mary's mind spins, the room closing in around her. Could the people she had known all her life truly believe she was the one who terrorized them? Now abandoned bus yard where an eerie silence hangs in the air. The rusted buses, once full of life, now stand as silent witnesses to the past. A figure steps out of the shadows. David Longberry, a former bus driver who had long been a suspect in the town's whispers. His face is gaunt, his eyes hollow as he surveys the scene. David, muttering to himself. They think they've got it all figured out, don't they? Blaming everyone but the one who really knows. He kicks at a piece of debris, his mind racing with memories of the past, his unrequited feelings for Mary, the bitterness that had festered over the years. David, bitterly. She spurned me, and then the letters came. But I didn't write them. No, that wasn't me. He pulls out an old, crumpled letter from his pocket, one of the many he had received, accusing him of unspeakable things. The handwriting is unmistakably jagged, menacing, full of malice. David, laughing darkly, whoever it was, they knew just how to twist the knife. But I didn't need to write those letters. The town did the rest. They did the rest. In another part of town, Paul Freshour walks out of the prison gates, a free man after 10 long years. He's older, thinner, but his eyes burn with the same fire of determination. Waiting for him is a journalist, eager to get the story behind the story. Journalist, eagerly. Mr. Freshour, now that you're out, do you have anything to say about the letters? Do you know who did it? Paul pauses, his gaze hardening as he remembers the years of torment, the accusations that landed him in prison. Paul slowly. I know one thing. The real writer is still out there. They used me as their scapegoat and now they're laughing free as a bird. But I've been watching, and I'll keep watching until I find out who did this. The journalist leans in, sensing the tension. Journalist whispering, do you have any suspects? Mary Gillispie, the sheriff, or maybe someone else? Paul's eyes narrow, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. Paul, everyone's a suspect in this town. Everyone has something to hide. And when you dig deep enough, you'll find the rot. But be careful. The letter writer knows too much. They've always known too much. Its streets quiet, its residents locked in their homes as night falls. The letters have stopped, but the fear remains, like a shadow that refuses to fade. In a darkened room, an unknown figure sits at a desk surrounded by stacks of old letters. The identity of the Circleville writer is never revealed, but the presence of this figure is enough to send a shiver down the spine. Mysterious figure, whispering to themselves, a smile curling their lips. They think it's over, but the secrets are still there, buried deep. And maybe, just maybe, one day, they'll be uncovered again. The Circleville Letters remain one of the most perplexing mysteries in American history. Theories abound, suspects are plenty, but the truth has always been just out of reach. As the letters stopped in 1994, the town of Circleville breathed a sigh of relief, but the question lingered. Was it truly over, or was the real letter writer simply waiting, biding their time until the next chapter of fear could begin? Thanks for diving into another tale of terror with us. If you crave more unsettling mysteries and hidden horrors, make sure to subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a chilling story. Remember, in the world of hidden horrors, the truth is often stranger and scarier than fiction.